Hello,
Hi,
Mamas!
Pops!
And today, mga Mamas and Papas, we will be discussing something about career and in regards to difficult situations in your work. So, yan yung mga Mamas and Papas, we will try to provide you through our own personal experience a solution if just in case you encounter these situations. Di ba, Papa Jack?
Yeah, I will try to dig through my experiences.
Okay. So, mga mamas and papas, don't go away. So, mga mamas and papas, we are back. We will be discussing certain situation at work that sometimes make your life difficult. So, the number one situation is if your boss doesn't like you. Yan. Kasi minsan mga mamas and papas, kahit anong gawin mo, hindi ka talaga type ng boss mo eh. Yung mainit ang dugo niya sa'yo, yung talagang parang nakikita ka pa lang niya, hinahanapan ka na niya ng mali, di ba? Have you experienced that, Papa Jack?
Ay, nako, yes.
Ikaw may ayaw sa'yo! Hindi mo nadaan sa charm mo? Oh. Ha?
Alam ko ba, kasi hindi sila Pinoy. So probably, I think, it's something about racism or something about Filipinos that they don't like. So, even yung mga tao ko, they don't like, I thought it was just me.
Okay.
But everybody else, parang they just don't like Filipinos for that matter.
So why did he hire you in the first place? Sandali lang, yung boss mo ba, lalaki or babae? Male or female?
Hindi ko sure eh.
Okay. Okay.
Lalaki.
Okay.
Lalaki.
So what did you do?
When the boss doesn't like you, the best thing to counter this is to just reflect on your performance. So, no matter how much they don't agree on what you say, or if they talk to you and turn to you on a personal basis, ayaw nila ng mukha mo, ayaw nila ng salita mo, pananalita mo, probably let your performance do the talking. So, kung magaling ka naman, wala sila talaga mareklamo sa'yo, di ba? That's what
Agree. Yeah. I experienced the same way, and I also experienced na yung immediate boss is also not Filipino. We're the same. Ayan. Oo. For some reason, he doesn't like me. He tries to find every fault in everything I do. Kasi nga mga mamas and papaps, siguro, yun yung difficulty ng mga Asian. We're not trying to put race into it, but somehow, sometimes there's a perception on like sometimes they think that if you are Asians, you're beneath them. Or lalo na if you're a woman, sometimes they think that, you don't know what you are doing, or you're being emotional. the usual crap. Ayan. And then if of course you express your opinion, parang it is not considered as valuable as their opinion. So, ako, tama yan. Kasi nung una, Papa Jack, ang unang naging solution ko was to go above him.
Go above him.
Yung kumbaga, above yung position na mas may mataas sa kanya. Kumbaga, yung boss niya. So, oo. Correct. It did backfire. So, that's why I do agree with the suggestion of Papa Jack, because at the latter part, ganun ang ginawa ko. I just try to ignore him and do my job. Yun na yun. So, as long as you do your job at the end of the day, that will speak for itself. It is going to be very difficult for you Pero if you like the job, then it will kinda neutralize the situation. Ayun.
Isa pa pala akong suggestion. Probably, since I think most Filipinos are very, very sociable naman.
Oo.
So, nabasa mo na yung 48 Laws of Power?
Yes.
Yeah. So, probably, sometimes kasi, boss doesn't like you probably because you outshine him.
Correct.
Diba? So, minsan nag-backfire din yung suggestion ko.
Correct.
So, sobrang galing mo. And then, probably nasa-threaten siya sa'yo because
Correct.
it could potentially be a replacement to him. So,
Correct.
magiging indispensable siya, di ba? So, just make sure that you don't outshine your boss. Probably that's the reason why he doesn't like you. So, laging gagawin mo siyang bida lagi.
Correct.
So, it's a little bit of a kiss-ass move, but I think at the end of the day, kapag kailangan mo ng suporta niya, wala namang permanente maski sa posisyon niya.
Correct.
So, yun. Don't outshine.
Actually nga sa akin, mga mamas and papaps, siya yung natanggal, di ba? At a later time. Kaya nga, I agree with, with Jack. You just do your job and let your work speak for itself. Ayan. Yun nga lang, totoo din yung sinasabi niya. Don't too much outshine the boss. Kasi they get threatened. Totoo rin yan. Power yan power play. Okay, the second situation, overwork, underpaid. Marami yan sa Pilipinas, di ba? Ayan, lalo na ngayon mga mamaps and papaps because it is an employer's environment, di ba? Dahil maraming ang nawawalan ng trabaho, so demand is less, so mas may control ang mga nag-hire right now. So they can really negotiate your compensation. So what do you do in that kind of situation, Jack?
Well, during these times, you can never really complain. So if you are overworked and underpaid, actually you should be thankful if you have a job nowadays.
Yes.
But even if you're overworked and underpaid, like
Correct.
most of the frontliners are overworked,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Nurses overworked, the pay is the same, but the thing is, at least you have a job. Well, as most people don't. Like even yung mga glamorous jobs like yung mga flight attendants, napakarami ko nababasa sa LinkedIn na they don't have or they've been laid off. So these glamorous jobs, I mean, you think it's glamorous, but mahirap rin naman talaga ang trabaho ng mga flight attendants, no? But it's just an example. So if you're overworked and underpaid nowadays, I mean, you should just be thankful na may mga trabaho. But then again, I think it's a phase. It doesn't mean na you'll be underpaid like all your life, di ba?
Correct.
So probably the thing is, you should probably try to climb the corporate ladder. So just build your resume, build your experience, and through time, you will get that particular chance to move up. So it's all about preparation. So when the opportunity comes and you're prepared, I'm sure you will get the break. But if the opportunity comes and you're not prepared, even if you're underpaid, hindi ka pa rin, you didn't master your craft, you remain underpaid for the rest of your life.
Okay. Agree din ako dyan. Kasi before COVID, there was a situation na parang ganun yung feeling ko. Or even as a dentist, di ba? Sometimes, your tendency is you end up lowering the price of your charge because you want to accommodate your patient. Now, in the corporate world naman, kasi mga mamaps and papaps, I'm not only a practicing dentist, but I'm also in the corporate world. Okay? So, nung na-experience ko yan, I try to renegotiate my contract. Diba? Kasi if you feel kasi na you've done your part and your performance is at par to request for an increase of your compensation, then I believe you should approach them. But make sure lang na your performance really deserve a raise. Di ba? Kasi ang hirap kasi mag-negotiate tapos wala ka naman talagang the company doesn't benefit anything from your work. So you have to evaluate very well your performance or what's in it for the corporation that you are still there working for them. So pag nasagot mo yon and you feel that you surpass their expectations, then you can renegotiate your pay. Pero just like what Papa Jack mentioned, during these times, you are just grateful to have a job. Yun. So, minsan babawasan pa yung existing salary mo, pero you're just grateful. Kasi nga, at the end of the day, nabawasan din kasi yung working hours mo or the hours that they can monitor that you are actually doing the job they are paying you for, 'di ba? So yun mga mamaps and papaps. So and totoo din yung sinasabi ni Jack na while this is the situation right now, you also improve your craft, 'di ba? Kasi later on, pagka hopefully things get better, you are also growing in your career. So later on, kapag nag-i-improve na ang business, nag-i-improve na yung situation, then you can now again renegotiate your compensation. Ayan. So, pagdating dyan, tingnan mo, corporate na corporate kaming dalawa. Parehong-pareho kaming sagot. Okay, the third situation, Papa Jack.
So the third situation is you have an inconsiderate or a pesky coworker. Boss, not your boss. But the colleague na.
Yes, coworker mo. Ayan. Kasi sometimes may coworker ka na affects your job eh. You have to depend on that person so that you can totally submit a certain work. Diba? Yung mga ganon. Kasi di ba team yan, minsan teamwork yan. Like for example, if you're working in a marketing team. Diba? So, alibawa, graphics. Diba? Naggagawa ang graphics, tapos yung photographer, hindi binibigay sa'yo yung photo. Paano mo magagawa yung graphics? Yung mga ganun ba? So, kumbaga, taking his own time kasi dun lang siya available. Oh, so, yun. So, how do you deal with that, Papa Jen?
Well, personally, hindi mo naman maiwasan yan, lalo na sa corporate world. Oh, di ba? You cannot choose kung sinong katrabaho mo. Just like hindi mo pwedeng piliin kung sino magiging kapatid mo, nanay mo,
correct.
Diba? Lalo pa kung katrabaho mo. So, it's but the reality of life or work life. But even then, once in a while, you experience these things, no? You have a pesky coworker, sadyang ayaw mo lang talaga. Inis na inis ka. But I think you should look at it parang in a positive way. It's a given. You will encounter difficult bosses, difficult colleagues, difficult co-workers, but the thing is, would you get affected? Kasi ikaw, kung may apektuhan ka, number one, ikaw yung talo, di ba? So, it's a test of EQ, I think. Emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. So, would you rather give up your job because you have a pesky co-worker? Diba? Unless it really personally affects you to the point na nababastos ka na or something like that. But kung talagang like ayaw mo lang siya, makulit siya, probably the best thing is to get to know him better. Get on, parang humanize this person. Get to understand him. If probably it would work, kasi I remember this one time na someone I really don't like in work.
Okay.
But in-invite, one afternoon, in-invite ko lang siya. Sabi ko, tara, merienda tayo. And then I asked him, how are you? How's your family? Turns out pala, something bad happened to him.
Okay.
So, nagkaroon siya ng parang nagkasakit yung anak niya or something like that. Tapos, parang yung disability na yun is there forever. So, parang I think, yung nire-release niya sa trabaho, parang yung personality niya. So, sumbongero, sip-sip, ganun. So, after that, parang nag-iba rin yung tingin ko sa kanya. Parang I try to understand this person.
Okay.
So probably ganun.
Ako naman mga mamaps and papaps, it really depends on the situation. Kasi if it actually affects my work, then the first thing I normally do is I talk to the person, 'di ba? Kasi una, ang mga mamaps and papaps, ako kasi, I don't do anything, I try. Kasi, I'm not perfect anyway. So, I try not to do anything that I don't want other people to do to me. So, if, for example, I don't like this, then I try not to do that to another person. If your coworker is something like that, then the first thing is I normally try to talk to them. I ask if they can give me a few minutes of their time or have coffee and have a discussion on the challenges that I feel that is affecting our work. Kasi, normally kasi if the pesky colleague you have is just hindi naman siya affects your work, but it's just that nakaka-irritate lang siya or you just don't like the person, then it's very easy to just avoid the person. But if that person is related to your work, then you really have to establish a certain relationship with that person. And you don't have to be friends with that person, but you can talk to the person on how you can work together and be able to do the job. Kasi at the end of the day, if, for example, this person will not be able to do his part, then it will totally affect the end product or the end service that the company is expecting from the both of you. But still, kung talagang continue siyang ganon, then again, you have to, try find a way to replace that person if you have a chance. Kasi, hindi ba? Kasi if it's affecting your job, then you try to find a certain way wherein you can replace that person if you have that power or that capacity. Or otherwise, ako kasi sometimes, if I know how to do it, I rather do it on my own. Yung ganon. Kasi kung hindi mo siya madaan talaga sa usapan, either iwanan mo na lang, kasi parang not worth it. If you can find another team person who can do that for you, and you can find a way na you rather work with that other person than this one, then do it. Pero if not, depende kasi sa level of importance. Yan yun. So, if you can live without that person, then try to find a way not to live with that person. Yung sa work, sa work relationship. Yan. Okay, so the next, na situation, Papa Jack.
The next situation, well, yung very common is bullying.
Okay.
So, bullying is ever present din pala sa work. Well, ako personally, let me try to remember kung nabully ako sa work. I think they tried, but they didn't succeed.
I think pareho tayo dyan.
Kasi I'm very, although I don't like confrontations, but when you try to confront me, hindi talaga ako urong sa confrontation.
Correct.
So, even if you're my boss, actually.
Same here.
So, okay, which is actually, don't think of it as an advice, mga mamaps and papaps, ha? Baka sabihin nyo, gagawin nyo rin. Might probably cost you your job. So, I don't want to be the cause na mawala yung job nyo. But this is just me talking to you. So, when it comes to bullying, kasi this is one of the things na personally, I don't give a damn who you are if you resort to bullying. Like, even if I feel na, like, especially kung hindi kita kalahi, for example. Like, ibang nationality, I don't really care. So, what I do when I feel that I'm being bullied, talagang I try to, at the best I can, talk to the person din, person to person. So, probably kung kaya natin siyang kausapin without others hearing it, personal, na kayong dalawa lang. I think that would be the best way. Kasi, eye to eye. Diba? Sabihin mo lahat ng ayaw mo sa kanya. Sabihin mo lahat ng nararamdaman mo sa kanya. And then, pag sinabi niyang, okay, I will continue, I don't care. Then, the next thing that I will call your attention, I don't care who's listening, if it's my boss or everybody else. you get what you deserve. I will bully you at the same time as well.
Okay.
Parang ganyan.
Ayan. Correct. Mga mamas and papa, sa personality ko kasi, and if you will ask any of the people who knows me, there's one word they always describe me, which is a strong personality. So I don't think that if you will meet me, you have the guts to bully me. But siguro ang pinaka malapit na masasabi ko na related sa bullying is gaslighting. Yung ba yung tawag nila doon? Parang ganon. Yung kasi they try to make you feel incompetent, or they try to lower down your confidence. Yung ganon. Yung psychological yung effect niya. Yan. Yun. Parang ganon. You end up questioning yourself if you are capable of doing the job. So, psychological yung banat nila kaysa sa yung mga words. Kasi yun yung mas mahirap eh. Like, ina-underlying kanila sa mga trabaho mo. Like, for example,
naghanap sila ng trigger, halimbawa.
Halimbawa, let's say, sabihin lang, maganda, pero kasi yung ganon. So, this is also another way of bullying. Na minsan, you cannot speak up kasi hindi ka nila tinitira ng diretso eh. Ina-underhand ka nila. So, and it's very difficult to deal with it because they can literally deny that they are doing it. Yan. So, kapag nandun ka sa situation, mga mamaps and papaps, ako kasi I'm of an age na I really know who I am. So, the tendency is no matter, although I still get affected kasi tao lang ako, but kahit papano, meron na kasing support system sa loob ko. Diba? So, however, kung wala ka pang ganon, I think the best way is to really, tawag nito, have a self-reflection first. Diba? Tingnan mo muna if the person who is doing that to you has the justification to do it really, or if there isn't, then you just have to make sure that your work or the outcome of your work speaks for itself. Kasi yan, lagi naman yan yun nandoon eh. Kung kahit anong gawin kasi sa'yo ng tao, kapag ka nadi-deliver mo talaga yung work mo, then mahihirapan silang gawin yon. However, kung magkakampi yung boss mo, halimbawa, yung boss mo doesn't like you, tapos the boss of the boss, hindi ka rin type, then I think it's about time to think whether that job is worth your time. Yan yung sa akin kasi don't allow people to make you feel lower than you're supposed to be. Yung parang gano'n. Yan ang payo ko dyan. Yan. Okay. So, and the last one is sexual harassment. Ayan. So, masyadong yan. Oo, masyadong serious siya. Actually, mga mamaps and papaps, na-experience ko yan. But sa workplace, kasi the unfortunate thing is, I misunderstood what he was trying to do. Akala ko kasi he was just trying to be friendly, and because you want to learn, kasi this person knows so much about the work, so you kinda admire his mind. Ang tendency is you try to be accommodating, and then unfortunately he put a certain meaning from your being friendly. So, in that situation kasi, mamaps and papaps, kasi actually siya, na-frustrate siya kasi parang dense ako. Hindi ko magets, di ba? So, diretso. And for the first time na I've heard a guy, kasi dito sa Pilipinas, mga mamaps and papaps, very subtle ang lalaki. At saka, generally, they court you, parang ganon, ek-ek. Kasi dito kasi talagang diretso. That I want to sleep with you. Ganon ka diretso. Kasi parang napapagod din siya. Nagmamanas na yung kokotin niya na hindi ko magets kung ano yung kasi ako matachi din ako, lalo na kung I like you as a person. It does not mean na I'm attracted to you, ganon. So, mahawak ako yon. So, nagulat lang ako. Pero, if you get into that situation, you just have to be very clear where you stand. Yun na yun. So, ang naging reaction ko doon, I also went straight to the point. But I did not insult the person. Try to avoid that, lalo na if you are in a situation na kayo lang dalawa. Yan. Kasi delikado dahil mamaya may masabi ka na ma-insulto siya. Yon. So, just like for me, kahit na sa totoo lang di ako attracted sa kanya, ang sinagot ko lang, I would probably consider it if I wasn't married. Yun yung yun yung sagot ko noon. Pero hindi. Kasi nga you do not want, kasi mataas ang position niya and I do not want to be placed. Kasi tiningnan ko yung environment ko. Yung environment ko kasi nasa kotse kami, mga mamas and papas. We were in the car in front of my friend's house. So, alam ko na if something goes wrong, somebody can help me out. Diba? Yon. And I do not want to totally upset him. So, I used my status as a married woman as an excuse. Tapos yon. After that, iniwasan ko na siya totally talaga. Yun yung magagawa mo lang dyan talaga. But if they become a stalker, then that's a different thing. I think if the sexual harassment is leading towards talaga in a more serious situation na there is a possibility na maging criminal na siya, a criminal act, then I think you really have to report the person either to your immediate boss or to the police para meron kang evidence na you are being sexually harassed just in case that it becomes really physical. Ayan. So, ikaw naman, Papa Jack.
So far, wala pa naman akong experience na sexually harassed.
Willing ba? Always willing?
Wala pa naman.
Hindi, pero with another guy.
With another guy, this is what I actually try to tell people. No? Even those na I work with, even the subordinates that I have, diba? You should always be careful with yung... Sometimes kasi sexual harassment is defined in a lot of ways. You can put meaning to sexual harassment in a lot of ways. So, pwedeng for you, hindi sa sexual harassment, pero ang interpretation pala ng coworker mo is sexual harassment na yun, di ba? So, sinasabi ko lagi, number one is don't shit in your own backyard. So, ibig sabihin, kahit na gaano ko gusto tong babaeng ito or gaano mo gusto tong lalaking yan, don't flirt. Diba? Huwag ka na mag-flirt in the first place kung ayaw mo punta sa ganung sitwasyon. Diba? And you have to be very clear. So once you probably feel na merong insinuations na ganyan, you have to be straight. Kasi parang it is also parang part of bullying na rin kasi.
Correct.
Diba? So, sabi mo, there's sexual harassment is real, sabi mo ganyan, and I can actually be charged with that, diba? Or something like that. So, let's not go into that. So, talagang you have to be very strict. I mean, sometimes kasi hindi mo naman gusto, but this is not dahil hindi mo gusto, hindi mo naman control kung anong gagawin ng ibang tao sa'yo. Yung reaction mo na lang na pwede mong gawa ng paraan. So, make sure that you are very straightforward sa sasabihin mo, sa reactions mo. And kasi usually, I think yung mga nabibictimize ng mga sexual harassment ay yung mga timid people, timid, mahiyain. They feel that they're weak. Diba? They try to take advantage of these people and then kaya nagkakaroon ng sexual harassment. But para dun sa mga, I think, yung parang sa sexual harassment, sa committing sexual harassment is, number one, kung if you will make a flirtatious move, don't do it at work na lang.
Okay. So, ayan mga mamas and papas, we are so engrossed with the discussion that we forgot to ask you that if you like this topic, please give us a thumbs up and do subscribe in Facial Value and hit that notification bell so that you will be notified every time we upload. Ayan. So, mga mamas and papas, do watch 2 of our recent ways on how to become healthy, and that is eating plant-based diet and also doing exercise. Ayan. So, ayan mga mamaps and papaps, these are real situations that you probably have experienced in your own work. So, as a parting word sa akin, my personal advice is always think that it is just a job. Okay? Even nowadays, no matter how much you need money, it is just a job. If you are in any of the situations that we mentioned, then you always have to evaluate the importance of your job. So, kung masyado ng too much delicate for you or dangerous for you, then just give it up. But if you have ways in order to solve those situations, then try to solve those situations. Di ba? Approach it in a mature manner. So, yan yung payo ko sa inyo mga mamaps and papaps as a parting advice. Ikaw naman, Papa Jack, as a parting advice.
As a parting advice, probably since, I'm looking at it as like an employee na Filipino. Usually kasi Filipinos are not very spoken. I mean, they don't speak out. So, I advise, like, I think mga kabataan ngayon, they actually are very confident, no? Probably because of social media. So, what I like about them is that they do speak their mind.
Correct.
Like millennials speak their mind. So, it's very important that you speak up and stand on your ground, stand on your own. Diba? So, lahat ng issues na to is because probably you're silent, you don't speak up, diba? So, I encourage everybody to show what you're made out of, diba? Speak up, so work. And then, and it's not the be-all and end-all of everything in your work. If it's toxic, get out of it. If you're young and hindi ka pa naman inuugat dyan sa kumpanya, try to find another environment that will be safer for you and will probably blossom as an employee or a worker. So, don't stay in a toxic situation.
Okay. So, mga mamas and papas, thank you so much for staying. Bye!
Bye!